What if I could share with you the worst day of my professional life?
Without fear or judgment or ridicule, and without loss of respect.
Could we learn together from my experience?
CaseMatters, a podcast series created for Australian dental practitioners, intends to do just that. To create a shared experience where all points of view are explored to help empower safer practice. Hello, my name's Dr. Annalene Weston, dental legal consultant at Dental Protection, and I'm going to guide you through today's case entitled, "Can't you just put it back in?" Put what back in, I hear you cry, as this is an oft-made request from a patient, be it a crown, a filling, or a cracked cusp, or sometimes even the tooth itself. Now, Mr. Campbell, the patient who asked the question, had some very strong views about his treatment, what he needed and what he didn't, and the quality of care he received. He attended a multi-clinician practice at a shopping centre and saw no fewer than 5 different practitioners over the period of 2 years, and we're going to meet some of those today. Inevitably then, there are some conflicting views and opinions in this matter, but which view is correct? All of them, or just some of them? And is there such a thing as the right point of view in this at all? Or could it perhaps be that everyone's a little bit right and a little bit wrong? We'll hear from the people involved and also look at the final outcome to see what lessons can be learned. Mr. Campbell first attended the practice complaining of a loose lower front tooth, and I'll let him explain it.
My teeth are a big source of frustration for me as they're just not good. It runs in my family as my mum and auntie both had full dentures by the end of 40, but I'm not going to end up like that. I've done my research and based on this, I have a strict regime of oil pulling, which helps my teeth tighten up whenever they get loose. You can laugh, but the evidence is all there. Most people are too blinded by Big Pharma to do the research themselves. I do have a health fund, and I recently took on extras cover because I have an old footy injury that's just been giving me some grief. So I'm at the physio a lot. I thought I'd come to the dentist for a checkup to see how bad things are so I can work out what to do from there.
Mr. Campbell attended and completed his new patient form declaring a clear medical history bar his injury and ongoing physio treatment. He was scheduled with Dr. Ryan for emergency care.
Mr. Campbell seemed like a nice chap, and we had a good chat about footy, comparing a few war stories before we began. Examination revealed pocketing of at least 5 mils around all of his teeth, with bleeding on probing indicating active disease. There wasn't, however, any suppuration. I took full mouth PAs, and these confirmed bone loss of at least 50% on all of his teeth, trocation involvement around his posteriors, and approximately 80% bone loss around his lower anteriors. His 4-1 was also in a traumatic occlusion, and this is the tooth he was complaining was loose. I assessed it as having grade 2 mobility. So I sat Mr. Campbell up and explained my findings, advising him he had gum disease and that it needed treatment. He'd given me the family history, so I explained that there was likely some genetics playing into this, but that with prompt treatment, we could likely get on top of things.
I was quite shocked, to be honest. I wasn't expecting this. A disease? That doesn't sound great. When Dr. Ryan started talking about it, though, it started to make sense, as I have some vivid memories of my mum covering her mouth with her hand when she ate, because it was always so hard for her to chew with her own teeth, bless her. He gave me some options for the treatment, and I asked him to write it down for me, which he did. He even gave me some information sheets with diagrams, which was really helpful. My biggest worry was the loose tooth, and so I asked him what could be done.
Mr. Campbell seemed open to the discussion and wanted to learn more, which was great. I offered to refer him straight to the specialist, but he shied away from that, having never really had any dental treatment as an adult. It felt a bit extreme to him, I think, and also he told me that he was not in a financial position to consider specialist care. He asked if there was anything we could do instead, and so I said I'd book him in with our hygienist, Anita, to see what could be done in the first instance, and then we'd refer him if the first course of treatment was not successful. To tide him over, I offered to splint the 4-1 with some composite to give him something to eat with, and I adjusted the occlusion so it wasn't getting so hammered every time he closed his mouth. I did tell him it wasn't a permanent solution, just something to get him out of trouble in the short term, and I charged him rebate only, reflective of this guarded prognosis.
So far, so good, it seems. I think we'd all agree if you saw 100 different dentists, you'd get 100 different treatment plans. And Dr. Ryan created the most appropriate plan that he could under the circumstances, with appropriate risks and warnings. Mr. Campbell left happy and without a sore hip pocket, as the appointment had been gap-free. He was provided an estimate so he'd know his out-of-pocket costs and rebooked to see Anita the following month.
Having read about this periodontal disease, I'm glad I've been oil pulling, as I think it would have gotten really serious if it hadn't been for all the antibacterial effects of that coconut oil. I can eat much better now that the tooth has been bridged to the one next door. That's really fixed things up. My understanding from Dr. Ryan is that I have some fossilised bacteria under my gums, like scale in a kettle. And so once the hygienist takes this away and gives me a clean slate, I'm confident I can manage this disease myself.
What do you think about Mr. Campbell's point of view? Do you think he's correct or overly optimistic? And do you believe he understands the nature and type of his disease? Do you think Dr. Ryan should have done anything differently? And what do you think is going to happen next? Mr. Campbell attended the hygienist as planned, so let's hear from each of them how the appointment went.
I'm not going to lie, that was a bit weird. Mr. Campbell seems like a really nice man, but he does have some funny ideas. First of all, he asked me not to give him local for the deep cleaning, as he read on one of his forums that the COVID vaccine had been put into LA. I told him that wasn't the case because the vaccine is a different consistency compared to the local, and I would have noticed when I was injecting it, and he seemed to accept my response. Then he asked me what I thought about oil pulling. I mean, I didn't want to be rude, so I said it was a good adjunct to support his oral health, but couldn't replace everything else. He seemed to accept that, and I debrided quadrants 1 and 4 under LA. I did warn him that he would likely still need to see the specialist, and I reiterated Dr. Ryan's warning about the temporary nature of his splint, and he agreed with me. But I don't know that he really listened or understood. Don't get me wrong, he seems like a really smart man. I don't mean he didn't understand because he isn't, but what I mean is he seemed to have such a solid belief system that I think he only took on board information that supported that and dismissed the rest.
Anita raises an interesting point. How do we ever know if patients are really listening or understand? How can we? And how much of a part does confirmation bias play in our conversations of consent? Perhaps hearing Mr. Campbell's point of view will shed some light on this.
Interesting piece of information from Anita. I'll post that on my vaccine information forum tonight. It makes you wonder if those injections with the COVID vaccine in them are being given by people who are complicit. Everything seemed to go well, I thought, so I'll come back and see her again for the rest of it.
Mr. Campbell returned the following month for the second half of his debridement, and Anita was pleased to see a reduction in bleeding when she gently probed the areas already treated, and she agreed with Mr. Campbell that things seemed to be healing really well. She completed his care, booking him in for a 3-month review and reiterating the warnings about the guarded prognosis of the splint and the likely need to see a specialist. 2 months passed, and then Mr. Campbell needed to call the clinic.
The treatment from Anita and Dr. Ryan has been great. I can feel the difference in my mouth, and my teeth feel tighter. So, of course, I started experimenting with some foods I've not been able to eat for a while, and crack, I broke the splint. Completely my fault. So I need to get it fixed.
Dr. Ryan wasn't available, and so Mr. Campbell was scheduled with Dr. Noon.
Mr. Campbell seemed like a really nice man and came in chatty and singing the praises of Dr. Ryan and Anita. I didn't probe too hard, as I understand he is in a period of healing, but Anita has definitely got some attachment back, which is great for Mr. Ryan, and I can see that his cleaning is good. The oil pulling through, it is quite a commitment for those who do it, and I can't help but feel he'd get around his mouth quicker with interdental brushes, but who am I to judge? The splint had cracked straight through, and I could see from the notes he'd been warned of this. I told him I could clean it all up and re-splint the teeth, but warned him that while everything else in his mouth seemed to be better than it was when he was assessed by Dr. Ryan and again by Anita, the 41 was really compromised. It needed extraction, really. The splint wasn't going to work long term, and he really needed to see a specialist about definitive treatment options. Mr. Campbell seemed quite crestfallen about this, but accepted the referral.
Well, that's disappointing. I should go and see what the specialist has to say, I suppose. I don't want to walk about without a front tooth. I don't want a denture, though. And I don't like the sound of the implants because I don't fancy something synthetic embedded in my body.
Mr. Campbell attended the specialist periodontist who essentially reiterated all that doctors Ryan, Nguyen and Anita had said and devised a treatment plan using LANAP. While Mr. Campbell liked the sound of laser treatment very much and was interested in the results, he was very much not interested in the price, as his business had suffered since the COVID-19 lockdowns. He did, however, book in for his care, attending to attend if he was desperate, but then cancel if he was not.
How much? I don't know how they can justify these fees. Dentistry has clearly been protected from the government's destruction of the economy. Because I know more businesses than mine have been destroyed, I'll just go back to eating soft foods again. I caused all of this by being ambitious with those ribs.
Sadly, the splint failed again within 2 weeks. Mr. Campbell attended the practice and saw a different dentist who reiterated the same advice as those who had gone before. Confident he now had control of his mouth, Mr. Campbell cancelled the appointments with the specialist. The 3-month review with Anita came around, albeit a few months later than planned.
I was pleased to see an improvement in the pocket depths, but I did advise Mr. Campbell that if he wanted to keep his teeth, then the specialist was the best option, and I warned him again about the splint. He's such a nice man. I wish I had the answers he wanted to hear from me, but I just don't.
A few months later, the splint failed for a third time, and Mr. Campbell was rebooked with Dr. Nguyen.
I told Mr. Campbell that we couldn't keep doing this, and certainly not for rebate only every time. We have probably reached the point now where even the specialist cannot save the tooth, as it's really loose now. He needs to accept that he will have a denture in the short term or be missing a tooth. I said I'd do it one more time, but that's it. He wasn't happy with me when he left, but surely he can see he can't keep doing this.
I might have known it was all about the money.
As Dr. Nguyen suspected, the splint failed again, within days, and this time it took the 4-1 with it.
I knew she's done the splint wrong. It didn't feel solid at all, like it did the other times, and the splint breaking has levered my tooth out of my gum. I won't see her again, and I wasn't that fussed on the other dentist I saw before her either, so I'm going back to Dr. Ryan, and I'll ask him to put the tooth and the splint back in.
I assessed Mr. Campbell and listened to what he had to say, but I struggled to keep a straight face when, after I had gone through everything from the start, reminding him of our discussions, he asked, "Can't you just put it back in?" I don't know how I kept the frustration from my face, but I managed. Just about. I told him, no, I can't. He proceeded to tell me that Dr. Nguyen had put the splint in wrong and created the whole issue. I took a deep breath and went through his periodontal disease again, showing him the x-rays and photos from the first appointment and referencing my clinical records. I may as well have been talking to a brick wall. Ultimately, he left the surgery in a temper, with no plan to replace the tooth, although he took it with him. I really hope he doesn't try to put it back in himself. It goes without saying, I didn't charge him.
Unbelievable. He seemed like a great bloke at the start, but he was completely unwilling to help me and started backtracking and covering up for his colleagues. My tooth was fine the first time before I had the treatment with Anita, Dr. Nguyen and the other fellow I saw in between. It's all a rort, passing me between themselves so they can all get a bite from my health fund, and then when the money ran out, they want me to pay.
Mr. Campbell looked around for a way to seek some redress on the clinic and clinicians within, and through an online search found the local regulatory body. Each state and territory has its own names for the regulator, so for the purposes of this podcast, we simply refer to them as AHPRA. Mr. Campbell set out his online complaint, emphasising the repeated breakages of the splint and the seeming focus on the financial aspects of his care. He pertained that Dr. Nguyen had intentionally put the splint in incorrectly to drive him to their recommended specialist, who he believed to be affiliated with their practice. He suggested the care had been provided without his consent and that the practitioners had colluded and coerced him. The complaint was made against all 5 clinicians, so to recap, Drs. Ryan and Nguyen, the specialist, the other practitioner who'd replaced the splint in between, and even Anita for good measure, though it's hard to see how or why he included her. The complaint arrived for each, and they each sought advice from Dental Protection on how to proceed. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Kristen, one of the case managers with Dental Protection, and she's going to walk us through what happened. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks, Annalene. It's likely that our listeners really feel the unfairness of this complaint, as they're aware of the facts. AHPRA, however, are not. And so our job is to assist the practitioners in putting across their side of the story, supported by their clinical records. As many of our listeners are aware, the studies show that around 75% of dental practitioners' records fall below accepted standard. We'll include a link to the Dental Board of Australia's reflective tool, which enables practitioners to review their records in the episode notes, for any colleagues who are interested in knowing where their records sit. This case was exceptional, not because of the unfairness of the allegations, or the fact so many people were brought in, but because of the quality of the records the practitioners had kept. All of the relevant findings, measurements, and treatments were clearly documented. But more critically in this matter, the discussions with Mr. Campbell about the nature of his disease, the options available to him, the consequences of not addressing it, and the guarded and time-limited prognosis of the splint were too. As regular listeners will know, as we are proceduralists by nature, dental practitioners often excel at writing down what they did, and equally, despite being strong communicators, may struggle to capture the records in the discussions that they've had with patients. Considering the 3 practitioners we've met in turn, Dr. Ryan had managed this by drawing out what he was discussing with Mr. Campbell whilst he was talking, and labelling the diagram and annotating with key points. This document was scanned into the system and the hard copy given to Mr. Campbell. And alone, it supported the fact that Dr. Ryan had talked everything through, although he had also furthered the documentation of the discussions in his records. Anita's records were great too, mapping out her concerns about whether or not Mr. Campbell was listening to her and setting out all of the information and recommendations she had given, alongside the questions he had asked and her responses. And finally, Dr. Nguyen captured the conversation in real time, utilising her dental assistant to type up what was being said while she was talking with Mr. Campbell. Coupled with the information regarding the findings, the diagnosis, the x-rays and intraoral images, we were able to assist these colleagues in responding to the complaint very clearly.
AHPRA assessed the patient's complaint alongside the information from the practitioners, and all 5 practitioners received the same outcome.
Thank you for providing a response to the complaint. AHPRA have assessed the complaint from Mr. Campbell, and on review of all the information and in consultation with the other arm of our regulatory body, we make no criticisms of your diagnosis, treatment, or the clinical recommendations made to Mr. Campbell. The matter is dismissed with no further action.
A fair outcome for all the clinicians, and it's pleasing to know that the good quality records were able to evidence the truth of the matter, which was that the treatment and advice provided to Mr. Campbell had been appropriate, despite the fact that this did not align with how Mr. Campbell felt. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed listening to this edition of Case Matters. The cases discussed in Case Matters are presented as an educational aid to dental protection members and to act as a risk management tool. They're based on issues arising in dental protection cases in Australia, and some facts have been altered to preserve confidentiality. If you like dental protection podcasts and you'd like to hear more, please subscribe and leave a review.